Before we pray, I want you to know, what do homosexuals do? Then you can weep when you see someone promoting something that is evil. The major argument homosexuals have is what people do in the privacy of their bedroom is nobody's business. But do you know what they are doing in the bedroom?
The gay movement is an evil institution.
Scott Lively is an American evangelical who preaches about what he calls the gay agenda.
I have spoken on these topics in almost 40 countries now.
True, Lively has given this talk many times, in many places. But this particular video is from a conference that Lively headlined in the East African nation of Uganda. And many believe it had an explosive effect. 1 month after the Americans' visit, a bill was introduced that would make homosexuality a crime punishable by life in prison or, in some cases, death. I traveled to Uganda just as the battle over the proposed anti-gay bill was heating up.
Homosexuality breaks the law of God, the law of nature, the law of the land, and the law of our traditional cultures.
Homosexuality is illegal.
It's like death wishes. They keep wishing us death.
I wanted to know what role American evangelicals had in the creation of this bill.
Do you think that your ideas regarding homosexuality are better received in Uganda?
Of course. Uganda is a Christian country. America really is not a Christian country anymore.
And what the consequences might be for gays and lesbians living in Uganda.
If the bill passes, you're finished?
We are finished.
As religious leaders and lawmakers stood united in support of the anti-gay bill, Uganda appeared to be on the verge of adopting one of the harshest anti-gay laws in the world.
In Africa, Sodom is an abomination, a taboo, and an evil.
Sunday morning in Uganda, and I'm attending the church services of one of the country's most famous preachers, Pastor Martin Ssempa.
Jesus is alive. And as we lift him up, he will overcome every power of darkness.
Ssempa first attracted the spotlight through his HIV work, working with young people through his church on the campus of Makerere University. His preaching of family values and abstinence only made him a favorite of American Christian groups, looking to partner with Africans to combat AIDS on the continent. But these days, Pastor Ssempa is attracting attention for another reason.
This whole battle we are in against homosexuality is a battle between not Martin Ssempa, but God versus the forces of darkness.
Pastor Ssempa has become the face of Uganda's intensifying anti-gay movement.
And if anybody has a problem when the Bible says the man shall not lie with another man against the Lord, it is not me. If you have a problem against God.
Pastor Sempa's crusade against homosexuality has pushed his popularity to even greater heights.
To me, he's a father. He's loving.
He's the voice in this generation against homosexuality.
He draws packed crowds of young people at his Saturday night sermons at Makerere University, where he often preaches against homosexuality.
A nozzle cannot go into a nozzle unless you break the nozzle. It cannot go into each other. A man is like a nozzle.
Recently, Pastor Ssempa has taken his message from the pulpit to the streets. where he's organizing mass protests in support of proposed legislation that would dramatically increase penalties for being gay, in some cases making it punishable by death.
We have shown the world that homosexuality, we do not want it.
With the help of Pastor Ssempa, Uganda's controversial anti-gay law has become the country's #1 issue. I wanted to find out how ordinary Ugandans felt about the bill, so I headed to the market with a local tour guide named Long Johns.
Prison them.
You heard that? They have imprisoned them.
You should imprison them?
Yeah, but not kill them.
Not to kill them. She says the bill should be passed. They should put you to death. He thinks homosexuals should be hanged. He's very supportive of the bill with all his heart and mind. Yeah.
When you hear all these people with these very negative views on homosexuality, how does it make you feel?
It's very confusing. You realize that people they don't mind whether you're going to jail.
What the people in the marketplace didn't know is that Long Johns is gay. For Uganda's gay community, life was already difficult, but the introduction of the anti-gay bill drove many further underground. Long Johns was one of the few who was willing to speak with us on camera.
So, I think I know the answer already, but why do they call you Long John?
Okay.
Because you're the tallest man in Uganda?
No, actually there was one guy who was even taller than me, but he died a couple of years ago.
One guy.
Long Johns lives in a small village just outside of Kampala, the capital, and his neighbors have started to gossip.
So you think everybody around here knows you and knows that you're gay?
They know, they really know, because in a place like this, just one small thing, the rumor goes around the whole neighborhood. Finding people who would really comprehend or understand your lifestyle is a bit complicated.
This is your house?
Yeah.
This is where you live?
This is where I live. There was a time I cried in this bedroom. I cried and I was like, God help me. Change this heart of mine. Remove that feeling. Give me that feeling where I see and really desire people of the opposite sex. In the Bible, it talks about God choosing me before I chose him, God knowing me before I knew him, God creating me in his own image. I don't think that I'm on earth by mistake, or my orientation sexually is really a mistake, because he knew me before I knew him. And I would specifically talk about the current situation where we have Pastor Ssempa. I think he's gone just beyond what his limits are.
After hearing Pastor Ssempa preach, I wanted to speak with him in person to find out why he has taken up this anti-gay crusade.
Homosexuality as a human vice has been there in Africa, but homosexuality as a human right has not been in Africa.
So you're saying the concept of homosexuality as a human right is something that has been imported from the West. It's not something African.
It's not African. It's actually it's not being it's being pushed on us.
More than being imported, it's actually being pushed.
Pushed, shoved down our throat.
Why did you decide to write this bill?
For the sake of protecting our children.
Homosexuality is illegal.
When you have a law against homosexuality, do you say except eating poo-poo?
As far as God Almighty is concerned, he created Adam and Eve. And he said the two shall become one. Homosexuality is illegal. I want to leave this behind with you. Hallelujah. Somebody praise God.
Uganda is a really Christian nation. Almost 90% of the population is Christian and the rest are Muslim. And the Christians are basically divided between Anglicans and Catholics. But recently, the evangelicals have been really gaining ground here. Joel Osteen, Joyce Myers. But the bestseller is Rick Warren. His book, The Purpose-Driven Life, is widely popular here. Everybody who's spoken to has read his book, and it's even distributed at some churches here in Uganda.
1, 2, 3. Fire! Take it in Jesus' name. Whoa!
When California-based pastor Benny Hinn visited the country, he sold out stadiums at $50 a ticket, more than the average monthly income for many Ugandans. Joyce Meyer's TV program repeats for hours at a time on Ugandan TV. And when pastor and author Rick Warren arrived in Uganda in 2008, locals celebrated the launch of his Purpose-Driven Living program. But recently, the growing relationship between American evangelicals and Uganda has taken a dark turn.
The gay movement is an evil institution that's goal is to defeat the marriage-based society.
This is Scott Lively, one of 3 American evangelicals who traveled to Uganda in the spring of 2009 to speak at a conference about how Africans can protect themselves from homosexuality.
The theme of this conference was the gay agenda, and the gay agenda was that there is a massive recruitment of school children into homosexuality, and any homosexual is actually following that agenda.
These are people that were molested themselves, and they're turning it around and they're looking for other people to be able to prey upon. And that when they see a child that's from a broken home, it's like they have a flashing neon sign over their head.
Lively is a missionary who has written several books against homosexuality, including The Pink Swastika, which, among other things, argues that homosexuals are the true inventors of Nazism.
Male homosexuality has historically been not adult to adult, it's been adult to teenager.
During the 3-day seminar, which drew thousands of Ugandans, including religious and government leaders, Lively and the other 2 Americans presented themselves as experts on topics such as how gay people can be made straight, how gays recruit children, and how gay men often sodomize teenage boys. Homosexuality was already illegal in Uganda, but 1 month after the conference, a relatively unknown member of the Ugandan parliament, David Bahati, introduced legislation that would dramatically increase penalties for homosexual acts.
Why did you decide to write this bill?
I did that for the sake of protecting our children. Here in Uganda, we have a problem of people promoting homosexuality, especially using money and materials to recruit young people.
Bahati's bill calls for, among other things, life in prison for those who commit homosexual acts, and the death penalty for serial offenders. It would also make it mandatory for people to report known homosexuals within 24 hours or face imprisonment themselves.
Many people say that the visit of 3 American evangelicals to Uganda back in March and the conference that was held here was the main catalyst for this bill.
Well, I think that is in a way a little bit insulting our country, that you're suggesting that Ugandans cannot think for themselves. So it is something very disturbing.
Like Bahati, Pastor Ssempa bristles at the idea that Americans had anything to do with the creation of the anti-gay bill. In fact, he believes Ugandans deserve full credit.
I find it racist, the whole conversation that Americans came and told us to make this law. We really need to be credited that this is an African homegrown initiative. Every time an African does something good, they blame some white man for it. I think that is racist.
But what bothers Ssempa more than accusations that American evangelicals influenced the bill is the fact that many are publicly distancing themselves from it.
Our own estimation of Americans on this issue, I think they're flaky. I think they're very wimpy. I think they can't stand when the fire begins to go off.
Ssempa feels the greatest betrayal came from his former colleague Rick Warren, the pastor who delivered the invocation at President Obama's inauguration. After months of pressure to weigh in on the Ugandan bill, Warren released a video stating his strong opposition to it.
With a law that I had nothing to do with, I completely oppose and I vigorously condemn.
Ssempa quickly issued his own response, denouncing his former friend.
Your lack of courage during this time has betrayed the fundamental need of what a pastor should be. Rick Warren comes here to Uganda and he says, I support the Church of Uganda in its stand against homosexuality. And then he goes to America, he says, oh no, I never said anything about that. I really... No, man, you can't be a wimp. You can't say one thing amongst Christians, then you go and say another thing on the liberal media. No! We must be consistent.
The inconsistency that Ssempa sees abroad only fuels his fire.
We do not want this sickness.
As he whips the nation of Uganda into a frenzy.
We don't want it!
Gays and lesbians fear for their lives.
It's like death wishes.
While American evangelical Scott Lively now watches from a distance.
Dr. Lively, do you condemn this anti-gay bill in Uganda?
In the Ugandan capital of Kampala, Pastor Martin Ssempa is rallying support for an anti-homosexuality bill that has drawn the ire of the international community, including the very American evangelicals some believe inspired the legislation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pastor Dr. Martin Ssempa. I'm here in the capacity as the chairman of the National Task Force Against Homosexuality in Uganda.
At the press conference, Pastor Ssempa was flanked by religious leaders, both Christian and Muslim, a show of unity seldom seen in Uganda.
We are making legislation to make sure that sodomy and homosexuality never sees the light of legality in this land of the Pearl of Africa.
In a room packed with local and international media, the pastor began a presentation that grew increasingly inflammatory and graphic.
I've taken time to do a little research to know what homosexuals do in the privacy of their bedroom. One of the things they do is called anal leaking, where a man's anus is leaked like this by the other person, like ice cream. And then what happens, even poo-poo comes out. The other poo-poo is out, and then they eat the poo-poo. The other one they do is they have a sex practice called fisting, where they insert their hand into the other man's hand, and it goes into the anus all the way. And it is so painful, they have to take drugs, but they enjoy it. Now, if we have any children, please step out. This is a parental guidance moment. That child can be moved out. So I've done research. This is what they do. Number one, you can see a man here having sucked the other person's rectum, and the other person is poo-pooing, and this one is eating the poo-poo all over the place. Tell me, when you have a law against homosexuality, do you say, except eating poo-poo? I mean, look at this guy sincerely. Bishop. Stagafulaiza. Hajat. We do not want this sickness. This is sick, and it's therefore deviant. We do not want it.
A skilled and savvy showman, Ssempa then summoned a young woman from the audience, one he claimed had been recruited into homosexuality.
So this is Sandra. She's a young girl who was recruited from school at the age of 16. After 3 years of living with older lesbians, she's out to tell her story. Just read your statement.
Members from Sexual Minorities Uganda brought to our school Interact Club.
The young woman recounted how she was lured with money and gifts into a homosexual lifestyle. The story struck a familiar and clearly effective chord. Ssempa regularly paints a picture of opportunistic Westerners with deep pockets preying upon Africa's impressionable, poor youth.
What kind of things do they give apart from money to seduce young girls and young boys into homosexuality?
I was given a laptop.
A laptop?
I was given an iPod as well.
How can we Africans survive when American money Swedish money is being used to seduce our children into lesbianism and homosexuality.
According to Ssempa, the United Nations, American billionaire George Soros, and the country of Sweden are all part of a vast conspiracy to spread homosexuality in Uganda and across Africa in general.
I am not ignorant of the fact that the homosexuals and their sympathizers have basically taken over the entire Western civilization institutions of power. There's an aristocracy that really looks at homosexuals as a superclass.
In addition to the conspirators abroad, Ssempa and his allies have also begun targeting organizations closer to home.
We're going to visit an organization called Sexual Minorities of Uganda. They actually go by the acronym SMUG. Because they've been harassed so many times and for security reasons, they're sort of located outside of town and have asked us not to identify the location.
Pepe is a program leader at Sexual Minorities Uganda. Because SMUG is one of the most visible gay rights groups in Uganda, they are under constant threat.
We've moved a lot because of insecurity, the harassments. We can't stay in a place for more than 3 months.
Wow.
It's like death. Wishes. They keep wishing us death.
Life has never been easy for Uganda's gay community. But Pepe has strong opinions on when she says the situation really began to deteriorate.
When did things actually start getting worse?
After the evangelicals came here.
After the March 2009 conference?
Exactly. The conference basically introduced the idea that homosexuals, the agenda is to recruit children into homosexuality.
So before this conference, this concept didn't really exist in Uganda?
No. We look up to Americans. So if they come here and say things like that, we're definitely going to believe them, you know? And that is what happened exactly. Basically, that seminar changed lots of people's minds and hearts because it went on, and then the bill was born.
The proposed legislation would outlaw groups like SMUG or any organization that serves the gay community. Even this meeting I'm having with Pepe would be considered illegal if the bill passed. While the law is still pending, the intimidation has already begun. 1 month after the conference, Pepe was one of a number of people outed by a local newspaper.
It's almost like a witch hunt.
It is a witch hunt, not almost, it is a witch hunt. Yeah.
They are raped violently by police in the school.
Homosexuality is prohibited here in Uganda. We don't want it.
As the anti-gay crusade reaches a fever pitch, things get worse for Long Johns.
I was getting ready in the morning to go to work. A gentleman walks in with chains. And
ankle chains?
Yeah, ankle chains. And he said that I'm from the police.
I cannot say like the word homosexual and I cannot repeat it over and over and over again here because definitely someone will turn and say, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
One afternoon in Old Town Kampala, I met Gerald. At a time when anti-gay sentiment in Uganda seemed to be at an all-time high.
Having grown up in this city and almost on this street, it becomes very difficult. There are very many people who know me here. By the time I'm speaking this, I can look like at 3 or 4 people and I know them. Yeah.
Gerald has always been guarded about his sexuality. Increasingly, he says he feels less and less secure.
Do you feel scared at all?
When I see someone overstaring at me, like the boda guy behind, because I believe he's listening to everything I'm saying, I get scared.
The motorcycle guy standing behind the cameraman?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's listening to everything, huh?
Yeah, I get scared.
Do you think that there are many gay people who are in the closet here in Uganda?
They're outnumbering the ones who are out. That is very obvious.
Because they just can't come out.
Because they just can't come out. Coming out is, to me, looks like it's suicidal.
These days in Uganda, the decision to come out isn't always a matter of choice.
This is the Red Pepper newspaper. It's the paper that outed all the suspected homosexuals. It had photos of all the people that they suspected of being homosexuals.
Many of Uganda's most popular newspapers have joined in on the anti-gay crusade, outing ordinary citizens by printing their names and photos. For many in Uganda's gay community, including Long Johns, privacy has become elusive.
The lady seated there, yeah, that one standing, she's the one who started spilling the whole rumor about me.
She told the people in the neighborhood?
Yeah. They say you people are gay. Yeah. I just look at her and pretend like I know nothing.
So what are some of the things that your neighbors here say about you?
He has sex with men. Maybe I'm a male prostitute, something like that.
Just as we're talking now, there's already, 4 or 5 people who are looking at us and sort of wondering what we're doing, right?
Mm-hmm. You have no privacy because there's nothing you can do.
But Long John says suspicions were heightened after the introduction of the bill.
People became more out and spying and mentioning others.
And you were even outed in a newspaper, right?
I've been outed twice. The first time, I think most people didn't notice it, but the second time, it was noticed because I got people confronting me and asking me if it was really me. But from the description, they'll link you with your job and then link you with the area you stay in.
So not only do they have your name there, but they actually put your address.
Even the address.
There's a culture of fear among gay people and among non-gay people. The non-gay people are fearing that the gay people are invading our culture. The gay people are scared because there's a massive, onset of hatred. You might be arrested, you might get mob justice. We have heard of people being beaten. So there's generally fear on every front.
One time I became so bitter, I came out and I stood actually there and I said, if anyone has a problem with me, you should go to the police, write a banner and hang on my door that I'm a homosexual.
Long Johns never believed that his neighbors would go so far.
I was getting ready in the morning to go to work, and as soon as I was putting on my shoes, a gentleman walks in with chains. And
ankle chains?
Yeah, ankle chains. And then he asks, "You're John?" I said, "Yes." And he said that I'm from the police.
Long Johns was arrested on the charge of sodomy, thrown in jail, and forced to pay hundreds of dollars in exchange for his freedom.
So this is the police station you were brought to?
Yeah, this is the police post where I was brought, and I spent a night here.
A growing number of cases like Long John's have led gay groups to join together with human rights organizations to fight back against abuses in Uganda. This conference had none of the fire and brimstone of a Ssempa rally. Until, that is, a member of the Ugandan parliament took the mic.
Allowing gays and lesbians to be alive in our lifetime in Uganda will not happen. I would personally pray that the law should allow certain people to apply to be armed men.
Outside the conference, I caught up with that member of parliament.
If you found out that one of your 4 daughters was a homosexual, would you report them to the authorities knowing that they could possibly suffer the death sentence?
I personally feel if my daughter opts to be a lesbian, and even if she's convicted for being a lesbian, I would still apply to go and execute her myself, to pass a message to many other people and many other families that this activities is bad. I'm not going to bend the rules just because it is my daughter.
So even if that means that she would possibly suffer the death sentence?
Yes. Even if that means that she would suffer the death sentence, let her die because she's doing a wrong thing. I'm so disappointed that such a kind of person can even be called my daughter.
The night after the conference, I went to a local bar in Kampala. The owners asked that we not identify it. Pepe, Gerald, and Long Johns were all there, along with friends.
Are there many bars like this in Kampala?
No. I think this is the most comfortable place where people can come and really feel okay about it. Now, of course, there are lots of, there are some instances when they are beaten up.
Here?
Yeah.
So there have been cases where people have been beaten up here too?
Several cases.
So even in this place that you guys say is gay-friendly, people have been beaten up?
It is gay-friendly, but it's not a gay bar.
Still, at least for one night a week, this place provides some refuge, as the fate of Uganda's gay community hangs in the balance.
Uganda is now the hottest news item around the world.
Surely we can agree that it is unconscionable to target gays and lesbians for who they are, whether it's here in the United States or most recently in Uganda.
We want to ask Barack Obama, is this what he wants to bring to Africa? To eat the poo-poo of our children? No!
Amazing. You just stand on the corner here and almost every other car belongs to an NGO. About a third of the country's domestic income relies on foreign aid. It's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year that comes from foreign countries. There goes another one.
Uganda is heavily dependent on foreign aid, and the greatest pressure on the country's leaders to kill the controversial anti-gay bill is coming from the outside. The proposed legislation has been widely condemned by the international community, with the issue reaching the highest offices of the United States government.
The Anti-Homosexuality Act of 2009 is an extreme and hateful attempt to make people criminals not because of anything they do, but because of who they are and who they love.
Nearly a year after the March 2009 conference in Uganda, the U.S. House of Representatives called a special hearing on Uganda's anti-gay bill. Ugandan human rights activist Julius Kagwa was among those who testified.
Religious leaders have threatened to hunt homosexuals if the government does not pass the bill quickly. The bill has increased fear among all of us, especially sexual minorities, and among everyone who believes in respect for diversity in Uganda.
Thank you.
A week later, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton addressed the bill directly at the annual National Prayer Breakfast in D.C.
And we are standing up for gays and lesbians who deserve to be treated as full human beings. And we are also making it clear to countries and leaders that these are priorities of the United States.
Even President Barack Obama weighed in.
We may disagree about gay marriage, but surely we can agree that it is unconscionable to target gays and lesbians for who they are, whether it's here in the United States or most recently in Uganda.
For Uganda's president, Yoweri Museveni, the anti-homosexuality bill has become a foreign policy nightmare.
The other day when I was here, Mrs. Clinton rang me. What was she talking about? Gays.
Fearing the country's president would cave to international pressure, backers of the legislation redoubled their efforts and targeted a deadline for passage of the bill, Easter Sunday. 1 month before that deadline, at one of Kampala's most popular megachurches, the bill's most prominent proponents gathered to rally support for their cause.
Right now, Uganda as a nation is under pressure. Uganda is now the hottest news item around the world because of the draft anti-homosexuality bill.
The rally was broadcast live on one of Uganda's top Christian radio stations. And the speakers, including David Bahati, the bill's author, took on their critics from abroad.
It is surely inhuman to subject the people of Uganda to a choice between aid or anal sex. We are not going to accept that.
But Pastor Ssempa was the headliner. as he had at the press conference Ssempa did in church. In front of a large congregation, he showed the gay porn.
Now, they start off by touching each other's genitals and smelling each other. Then this one smears the poo-poo all over the other person's face.
If, as he suggested, the American evangelicals were backing down, Ssempa was doing anything but.
As if that is not enough, he puts the hand deeper.
The pastor, who in the past has himself benefited from his many international allegiances, was as defiant as ever.
As Africans, we want to ask Barack Obama to explain to us, is this what he wants to bring to Africa as a human right to eat the poo-poo of our children?
The rally ended with Ssempa and other religious leaders gathering around David Bahati and asking those present, as well as those listening over the airwaves, to pray for him and the passing of his anti-gay legislation.
We are going to pray for Honorable Bahati and all the members of Parliament. Deliver us from evil.
Deliver us.
Deliver us from evil. Deliver your servant Bahati from evil. Provide for him, Lord.
Yes, Lord.
For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory. Now,
in Uganda, church and state have become virtually inseparable.
David, you are anointed to slay the Goliath of Sodom.
Yes.
And Bahati is clear that religion was a guiding force in authoring the bill.
This is a defining piece of legislation in our country, and we think that God is using this small bill to shake the foundations of sin around the world.
I have good news for you. The people you sent to Kampala to represent you will pass this bill. This bill will be passed.
And also we think that God may be using this country, Uganda, to provide leadership in the area of moral issues where actually the world needs it most.
With or without Bahati's bill, Ugandans vow to fight homosexuality.
You caught in homosexual, you hanged. But we have not caught one as yet. That is the only good thing.
And we find out just how much influence American evangelicals had on the bill.
What is the lesser of two evils here? To allow the American and the European gay activists to continue to do to that country what they've done here, or to have a law that may be overly harsh in some regards.
Easter Sunday came and went in Uganda, without passage of the anti-gay legislation. Despite the best efforts of its proponents, the bill continues to languish in Parliament. Its fate now uncertain after indications that pressure from the West succeeded in slowing its momentum. But a conversation with this group of students reveals just how effective Pastor Ssempa and his campaign have been.
So would you put your hands up who supports the bill?
2 hands or 1 hand?
2 hands or 1 hand, yes. So everybody here supports the bill?
Yeah. Homosexual is not a debate. We have rejected it totally. You caught in homosexual, you hanged. But we have not caught one as yet. That is the only good thing.
It is very unnatural, very ungodly. I would never think of doing such a thing because it is inhuman. It is inhuman in the real sense.
Despite denials from those religious leaders and politicians we spoke with, including the bill's author, David Bahati, many in Uganda's gay community still believe the anti-gay legislation and the heated climate in the country can be traced back to the American evangelicals who came to Uganda for that controversial conference in the spring of 2009.
I wonder if they are aware of just how much damage, their visit caused.
Several weeks after returning from Uganda, I met with one of those evangelicals myself. The man in the video, Scott Lively.
Why did you go to Uganda?
Well, I went to Uganda because I was actually one of the people that helped to start the pro-family movement there. And then they wanted to do some kind of anti-homosexuality law.
So you knew that there was a bill in the works when you went to Uganda?
I knew that they wanted to introduce a bill, but there wasn't one in the works in the sense that something had been drafted.
Lively says he had no idea the bill that emerged would be so harsh.
I told them that they should emphasize rehabilitation and not punishment.
So then let me ask you very bluntly, Dr. Lively, do you condemn this anti-gay bill in Uganda?
It's my understanding that they're going to remove the death penalty. But if they keep the death penalty in it, yes, I condemn the death penalty.
Do you then support the rest of the bill if you remove the death penalty part of it?
I would not have written the bill this way. What it comes down to is a question of the lesser of two evils. What is the lesser of two evils here? To allow the American and the European gay activists to continue to do to that country what they've done here, or to have a law that may be overly harsh in some regards. I think the lesser of two evils is for the bill to go through.
It turned out that even as we were speaking to Scott Lively near his home in Massachusetts, another American evangelical was on his way to Uganda.
We are trying to restrain an agenda that's going to hurt the nation and hurt families.
In the U.S., Lou Engle led rallies for Prop 8, the law banning same-sex marriage in California. In Uganda, Engle joined with key backers of that nation's anti-homosexuality bill at a rally in Kampala.
I believe Uganda has suddenly become ground zero. But God brought you to make a statement, to stand for righteousness.
How much a rally like this one can do at this point to advance the anti-gay bill remains to be seen. But for some, the bill's passage or defeat is now almost beside the point.
This thing has set in motion, the worst wave of hatred we've seen in many years.
Growing intimidation and constant threats are now driving Long John's from the home where he's lived for the last 5 years.
You just swallow the pride and you swallow that pain and keep quiet. But you don't, when you lie down and think, you say, oh my God, why don't you just speak to their hearts so that they can think twice and have some mercy,
So you've been arrested because you're gay. You've been hurt, physically hurt because you're gay.
Yes.
How much worse can it get?
I believe it's even going to get worse because who knows, maybe they've already even compiled the list and they know these are the number. As soon as the bill passes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 must be arrested in the next couple of hours.
So if the bill passes, you're finished?
We are finished.
It is you honor your father and your mother when you marry and you have children.
In church, on campus, and in town squares, Pastor Martin Ssempa carries on his crusade.
If God says sodomy is a sin, it is a sin. And I can't change it. And if you have a problem with me, your problem is not with me, your problem is with God.
And in America, Scott Lively stands firmly behind him.
I think Martin Ssempa is a good man. He's trying to protect all the children of his country from being homosexualized.
Every one of them must come and bow down before you. Barack Obama will come and bow before you. The famous in Hollywood will come and bow before you. Oprah and Tiger Woods will come and bow before you.
I thank you, God. I thank you, Lord.